we in the grip of a powerful and ancient secret society? Does the Illuminati run the world? Is every war, revolution, new disease and new idea released upon the world by shady men who work in the background? There are, of course, tales of secret societies throughout history. The first question we have to ask is why they had to remain secret. According to popular belief, it is because those meeting in secret were men of renown or standing and were plotting to change civilization, whether this be through destroying the church, government or royalty, or through defending the same. In almost every instance, these secret societies are playing a religious role, contacting God or the gods in ways that the state religion cannot or will not. This in itself gives us a good insight. It is a stark fact that religion or beliefs are excellent ways of drawing in members and utilising a heightened state and individual for their own ends, whatever they may be. As with most religions, the members of secret societies are chosen ones, members of the few. This in turn makes the initiate feel more important when accepted, even though precious few are turned down at the initiate stage. The idea of there being different levels then moves the process on and ensures that the new initiate strives to become an adherent or full member by learning the ways of the club or society, and thus the initiate becomes fully engulfed in the world of the society. Secret societies take the membership a step further by including certain devices that the initiate must learn. These devices include secret handshakes and words, special days of the year known only to the few, and insights into standard texts. All this and more makes the initiate feel ever more important. In all instances, the ultimate enlightenment experience seems to be kept back for the very highest levels of initiation. There is also a build-up of camaraderie through regular meetings. This leads the member down a path into the secret society of such emotional depth that to leave would feel like losing a member of the family. The comfort zone the initiate finds himself in is such that he does not wish to leave. During the initial stages of any initiation, the new member is cleaned, or in simple terms, cleared of any thinking that would not benefit the society or religion. The new recruits are told to leave the world behind, including family and friends who are called distractions. They are then given as a replacement the new family of the church or society, who at this stage of the process are always forthcoming with help and love to such an extent that the recruit is overwhelmed with joy. A joy that remains in the new recruit's mind deeply entrenched due to the cleaning process previously carried out. The church and society alike supply the emotional demand with mystical insights that can, again, only be supplied to those who pass tests. These tests are created to deepen the bonds of the initiate yet further. With each new learning process, the adherent feels more and more special and is indeed given special status. There are tests which are put in place to determine whether the initiate has the ability to move further. The deeper aspects of these organisations are more and more secret, and at the highest level they have to be, as this is where the true secret or purpose of the society or religion lies. The Knights Templar tested the initiate with the spitting on the cross. The reason is simple and has nothing to do with the irreverence spoken of by the Church. On one level, if the initiate fails to spit upon the cross as requested, he is rewarded for his true faith with membership and believes he has made it. On the other level, if he does spit upon the cross, then he has shown true discipline and will be led by the Master's authority wherever that may take him. This initiate will move further up the scale that is hidden to the first who failed to follow the command. The ways of the society are seen to the outside world as strange and unusual. However, these can eventually become the norm and accepted by the general population. Take for instance Christianity. In the early years of its existence, it was classed as a cult or indeed secret organisation due to having to remain underground. Eventually, this underground stream of Christianity grew and grew, with members in positions of state authority. This in turn made it more and more acceptable. Christianity had secret signs, secret handshakes, special myths and rituals, just as any secret organisation. Eventually, Christianity ruled the majority of the globe and was itself then fighting against underground streams, which retained the mysteries of ancient myth. Amazingly, exactly the same can be said of Islam, Judaism, Buddhism and even communism, all of which began as secret and clandestine organisations, seemingly against the state. Just like the secret society of the Nazis in the 1930s, all these now standard organisations or religions began within secrecy and ended up by taking power. The fact remains that history has shown in every generation today we have secret societies across the world in each country, all with their own goal and all being watched, as ever, by the state. What history has shown is that eventually these underground streams do indeed alter the power balance of the world. Just look at September the 11th and the attacks on America. They were carried out by clandestine, secret organisations and did indeed alter the world. Another example was the revolt in America against the British Empire, which was backed, led and inspired by the secret society of the Freemasons. In Russia and France, the revolutions were similarly created by secret organisations. This does not mean that every attempt by every secret society will work, and history is littered with hundreds of such failed attempts. Others have managed to claim power, but only fleetingly. Plato was an initiate into the mysteries of Eleusis, and he even tells us in his writings how he was initiated. He claimed that he was placed in a pyramid for 3 days where he died symbolically, was then reborn, and was then given the secrets of the mysteries. There is no wonder that the Great Pyramid was claimed to be part and parcel of the mysteries. The name given to it, Iket and Kuti, meant glorious light or shining. So what is a secret society? Is it simply a group of individuals basing their origins in the mists of time, or in the celestial and solar dance of the cyclic universe, who come together to effect change? Sometimes they are successful, sometimes they are not, but in most cases they effect some kind of change in society at large. They are, on the whole, spiritually based, and what we will discover is that there is a major thread running through those that have been successful, and that thread is illumination. which gave rise to the name the Shining Ones. With this in mind, we must now move on to one of the earliest of all origins of secret societies, and from where is derived much of the terminology and symbolism still used today by Freemasons, Rosicrucians and many others: the Watchers, otherwise known as the Sons of God, and in Hebrew as Erim. In doing so, we shall be taking a look at the very origins of the first secret societies and the influences of astrotheology and serpent worship upon them. According to some, Sumeria means land of the Watchers, and it is from this land that the Elohim, or Shining Ones, who governed the Watchers, also came. Let's just take a look at these Elohim for a moment to find out who these gods were that supposedly enslaved men and were in charge of the Watchers. The term Elohim is often used in the Old Testament for the Lord. This is an incorrect usage, as the term is plural and means shining ones. The Sumerian El means simply bright or shining. The Old Irish Eilil means shining. Old Cornish El means shining. Elf means shining. The Incan Illa is bright or to shine. The Babylonian Elu is to shine, to name just a few that have sprung up worldwide from the same Sumerian source. Baal, the deity often spoken of as the Lord in the Bible, is also seen as a shining one in the Old Testament and is called the owner. At that time there were many owners or shining ones. In fact, there was one for each village. According to General Albert Pike, the famous Masonic historian, the Elohim were the host of heaven, ascending and descending to pass messages to and from God. The host of heaven were of course the shining stars in the night sky, humanized. Some of the shining ones were termed watchers. They watched the heavenly host or stars in the sky. They also watched over man. The fact remains, though, that the ancients spoke of a time when there were gods or shining ones who ruled up and down Sumeria in Egypt and who employed watchers over the ordinary folk. The Hebrews termed these watchers as those who watch. In the Greek, this is translated as giants, a race that even Hesiod featured as being monstrous. Now we can understand the role of giants that are seen across the world of folklore as the presence of the Watchers. In the Testament of Amram, we have a remarkable insight into the aspect of these shining watchers. I asked them, "Who are you, that you are thus empowered over me?" They answered me, "We have been empowered and rule over all mankind." The Mosaic Book of Jubilees was intended as a history of the days of old and reveals the purpose of the Watchers. For in his days the angels of the Lord descended upon the earth, those who are named Watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, that they should do judgment and uprightness upon the earth. The Watchers taught mankind the knowledge of the signs of the earth, writing, meteorology, geography and geodesy, all implying that these shining ones understood the energy and power of the earth and its electromagnetism, not to mention the movements of the planets. There are many fables of these times from across the world of great builders, architects and magicians, all relating entirely back to these Shining Ones' origins. The truth of the story of the Shining Ones and their watchers has been the subject of a purging by many authorities, who were understandably concerned that the myths of these angels and their worship would detract the people from the worship of the one God. With this end, the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees were stricken from the accepted list and are now known as Apocrypha. What we do know, though, is that these watchers continued in what has been described as the underground stream and were called egregores. Much of the myth of the watchers is found to be in the Middle East, with the Canaanites, Egyptians, Sumerians and even Asian civilizations. But the underlying current is a belief in the Shining Ones as leaders, with watchers doing their bidding, evolving later into God with his angelic beings. We know that mankind deified these men of renown, to whom this refers, and therefore we know that these Shining Ones were mere men, and not, as some would assert, aliens or otherworldly beings. The term is Greek and means to rouse from sleep, to be excited by passion, to be awake, or to watch. All terms linked to the Enlightenment or Illumination experience. It also became a Gnostic and mystic term, thought to mean collective unconsciousness. Eliphas Levi speaks of these egregores on numerous occasions, and even links them to the giants or watchers spoken of in the Book of Enoch, saying that they take shape and have appeared in the guise of giants. These are the egregores of the Book of Enoch, termed the Celestial Watchers or egregores by the ancients. Levi also calls these egregores the Shining Ones of the Bible, and that they are expressed in the myths of various cultures, just as we have been finding. It therefore appears that Levi and others knew of these egregores or watchers from the recently translated and widely available Book of Enoch. Levi was well known to have Rosicrucian tendencies, and this movement too was aware of the meaning of the word. In fact, they believed that the egregores were still in existence and were in the background. There are a whole host of 16th and 17th century mystics, including Dr. John Dee, who were also aware of the Book of Enoch. In fact, Dee has been implicated as one of the founders of the Rosicrucians, as well as being a spy of the realm under Queen Elizabeth. Like the later Illuminati, the Rosicrucians were a supposed response to the activities of the Jesuits. Whether or not the actual Shining Ones, Watchers or Egregor were physically around during this vast expanse of time is obviously the subject of debate still. But what this does show is that the ancient influence of the Shining Ones was certainly still in existence. The thread that spans the gap in history, of course, is that of the alchemists and religious orders. So the question now has to be asked, does the influence or even existence of this line of secret societies still remain with us today? Are we in fact controlled by the ancient watchers? Many people will have heard of the infamous Illuminati. Others will be wondering what on earth they could be. Ever since their inception, this 18th century secret society has garnered the imagination of millions. However, to first understand the Illuminati, we must understand two specific institutions, the Freemasons and the Catholic Church. The history and origin of the Freemasons is not a simple subject. In fact, it is virtually impossible to decipher the truth from the myriad histories fed into thousands of books on the subject. The reason for this is simply that it is a large organisation, but it is split into many facets, each one holding virtual autonomy, and so, over time, differences of opinion and ritual have arisen. Many Masonic historians try desperately to claim that their lineage stretches right back to the Temple of Solomon and the builder Hiram Abif. They are even told it as fact in their ceremonies. Others claim descent from the Roman and Greek stonemasons and the Roman augurs who had special knowledge of the lay of the land and energies related to our modern day perception of ley lines. There can be no distinct proof of any of this, albeit likely that the secret knowledge has been passed down the centuries from one adept and initiate to another. There is indeed plenty of evidence to show that in the 14th century the Masons were already a well-established group and indeed accepted or were evolved by the inclusion of the Knights Templar that had escaped Catholic suppression to Scotland. The first official documentation we have is from 1356 and is actually from England and describes the formation of the London Masons Company. However, these are only the papers that have survived and speak of groups that were forming. It does not deny the fact that there must have been some pre-existing groups that do not have paperwork to prove their pre-existence. The only odd evidence we do have is the symbolism being employed within the great building works of Europe from the 11th century, helping us to span the time period beautifully and thereby showing a continual thread. Now, understanding that this great building exercise erupted with such a vengeance following the First Crusade and the setting up of such organisations as the Knights Templar and Cistercians is the first part of the puzzle. The Templars and their non-warrior cousins, the Cistercians, were more than incidental in both bringing back the seed of alchemical enlightenment from the Crusades, but also the building skills of the Islamic Middle Eastern world. This is seen in the arch and the octagonal designs incorporated into most Templar and Cistercian buildings, as well as other building works carried out under their tutelage. Also built into these structures are huge amounts of numerological symbols and mystical metaphors. These methods were understood and carried on by the Freemasons, who today ritualise these ancient ways, and many probably do not even understand their correct purpose. These mystical building metaphors are as ancient as Stonehenge or the Great Pyramids, even if the term Freemason is not. Today, the Freemasons are a global phenomenon, with members from across the business community, religious establishment and politics. The influence they have is obviously huge and universal. They have links with many other orders such as the Sovereign Order of the Knights of Malta and have had over the years a lot of bad press for their influence they have brought to bear. They eventually swallowed up other institutions such as the Illuminati. The history of the Freemasons reveals that they have been more than incidental in effecting change on a worldwide scale. The Philippine insurrection of 1896 was orchestrated by Freemasonry. That particular insight into Philippine history was suppressed by the United States government for 45 years until it was finally revealed by historian John T. Farrell in 1954. Masons have been implicated in the Russian and French revolutions, not to mention the American War of Independence. The rebellion in Italy against papal government during the 1830s was a classic Masonic revolutionary movement. Its leaders were all ardent Freemasons. Benjamin Disraeli, the once Prime Minister of England, said, "A great part of Europe, the whole of Italy and France, and a great portion of Germany, to say nothing of other countries, are covered with a network of these secret societies, just as the earth is now being covered with railroads. And what are their objects? They do not attempt to conceal themselves. They do not want constitutional government. They do not want institutions. They do not want provincial councils, nor the recording of votes." A lot of the time, on the surface, there seems to be a war between the Catholic Church and the Freemasons. This is an interesting point, and one that confuses many people when they see that the Masons are actually linked and were created by the Catholic Church, or indeed maybe the other way around. This is a standard ploy used by Secret Service people across the world, and even to be found within the statutes of many secret societies and religious orders. It was the done thing to appear on the outside to be against the powers of authority, whilst all the time working for them. The Freemasons can clearly be shown to have evolved from esoteric sects emanating from within and even before the Catholic Church, and as a direct result of Templar influence in Scotland. So the Masons could be traced back to the Catholic Church, the Templars, the Essene, Islam, and thereby back even further into the Levant, Egypt, and beyond, to the original Sumerian Shining Ones. It also goes back to the Knights of St. John or Knights of Malta. Both the Templars and the Knights of Malta have re-emerged from within the Masons and are now orders themselves in various forms. Most still owe their allegiance to the Masons, but are distinct. The present-day Knights of Malta can directly be traced back to their origin and are now located in the Vatican. There is appearing a glimmer of that central part of the wheel to which all the spokes seem to be attached. Before the Illuminati merged into the Masons, they had been implicated in the creation of several other groups, such as the Rosicrucians, Golden Dawn, and even the Lutherans and Protestants. Even South America was regained via the Spanish under guidance of Jesuit and other monastic orders, all Catholics. In 1789, Mason de Luchette wrote, "There are a certain number of people who have arrived at the highest degree of imposture. They have conceived the project of reigning over opinions and of conquering not kingdoms nor provinces, but the human mind. This project is gigantic and has something of madness in it which causes neither alarm nor uneasiness. But when we descend to details, when we regard what passes before our eyes of the hidden principles, when we perceive a sudden revolution in favour of ignorance and incapacity, we must look for the cause of it, and if we find that a revealed and known system explains all the phenomena, which succeed each other with terrifying rapidity, how can we not believe it?" The Illuminati are for many the men in black, the silent masters in the background who plot our futures. To others, they are a fable, a boys' club, created by frustrated Freemasons in the 18th century. There is, as ever, truth in all, but we must understand that most of the time we end up believing exactly what the marketing and propaganda machine wants us to believe. Sweeping aside the Christian Bible Belt influence of anti-conspiracy theorists and those crazy ideas of the conspiracy theorists such as they came from outer space, we have to get back to the basic facts as we know them. Standard history tells us that the Order of the Illuminati was started by Jean Adam Weishaupt, who was born in Bavaria in 1748. His father was a professor at the University of Ingolstadt and secured a scholarship at a Jesuit college for Adam, who then went on to become a law student at the age of 15. Ingolstadt was a steadfastly Jesuit area and had been for over 200 years. It has been said of the Jesuits that they were the world's largest and most powerful secret service, due mainly to the fact that they were feared by many in the Catholic Church and that a universal confession could be well utilised for blackmail. According to a converted nun, the Jesuits offer the world at large a system of theology by which every law, divine or human, may be broken with impunity, and by which the very bulls of popes may be defied. It is a ghastly religion. It is a religion to be abhorred by all honest and honourable men. So, according to this 19th century writer, they were even above the bulls of the Pope, and even President Lincoln, who was finally assassinated after numerous attempts, said, "The Jesuits are so expert in those deeds of blood that Henry IV said that it was impossible to escape them, and he became their victim, though he did all he could to protect himself. I know that the Jesuits never forget nor forsake." On the one hand, the Jesuits fraternize with Freemasons, royalty and presidents, and on the other, take an oath which puts them at odds with just about everybody who is not Catholic. It is into this world that Weishaupt was brought up. By 1775, Weishaupt was Professor of Canon Law at Ingolstadt, and it was this year he, or somebody else, chose for Weishaupt to form a plan of an association of which he would head. This association would oppose the forces of superstition and lies, which can only imply religion. The thoughts of many commentators are that Weishaupt so hated the Jesuits that he thoroughly intended to do away with them once and for all. Others believe that Weishaupt was in fact trained by the Jesuits for the purpose of raising a worldwide army of spies who would constantly be feeding back information that the Jesuits could not get any more through their confessions. In fact, the Illuminati even set up their own confessions, in line with that of the Jesuits. All of this surveillance and confession were fed back to the Jesuits from the very people who were supposed to be against them. How better to find out what was in the mind of the opposition than to be the opposition? This is a standard double ploy utilised for centuries by secret services of all religions and all nations. Through associations with the Freemasons, the Jesuits managed to get information from and influence to the Freemasons of the globe. Just how much influence the Illuminati finally had, or have, is unknown, as that is the idea of secrecy. But what can be seen is that following Weishaupt's amazing creation out of the order of a much older institution, we suddenly have several worldwide revolutions and the balances of power shifting like never before. It is out of these times and revolutions that our present day governments were formed. Read into that what you wish. The true history of the Bavarian Illuminati, like that of the Freemasons who erected the church buildings, is now so clouded in mystery that it is almost impossible to decipher. In the past few decades, so much madness has been written and subtle links glorified that the popular perception has the Illuminati still in existence today, ruling the world like some sci-fi elite. The fact remains that the links we do have reveal that the Illuminati were a group created subtly by the Catholic Church to stave off dissent within Europe's privileged and influential. Regardless of the evidence, however, the Church and even its opponents still maintain that the Illuminati were, and even are, opponents of the Church and State, even though there is precious little evidence for this. In those places that the Illuminati have been powerful, the Church is to this day still a big force, and yet in those countries, such as England, that no longer have a powerful Catholic contingency, the Illuminati are not. This is evidence in opposition to the normal belief. For centuries, there have existed certain esoteric schools of mystical philosophy, originating apparently in several Oriental currents of thought, meeting in the Levant, Egypt and the Near East. We find in these schools elements of Buddhism, Zoroastrianism and Egyptian occultism, mingled with the Grecian mysteries, Jewish Kabbalism and fragments of ancient Syrian cults. Out of the hodgepodge of Oriental philosophy, magic and mythology, arose in the earlier centuries of the Christian era numerous Gnostic sects, and also the rise of Mohammedanism. Several heretical texts among the followers of Islam, such as the Ishmaelites, Druzes and Assassins, which found their inspiration in the House of Wisdom in Cairo. To the same sources may be traced the ideas that inspired such political religious movements of the Middle Ages as those of the Illuminati, Albigenses, Cathari, Waldenses, Troubadours, Anabaptists and Lollards. To the same inspirations must be assigned the rise of early secret societies. The Templars are said to have been initiated by the Assassins into the anti-Christian and subversive mysteries, and we find similar traces of an old and occult origin in the Alchemists, the Rosicrucians, and the later mystical cults. They are all connected and all derive from a similar, if not the same, source. This same source may also be traced through the infamous Essene, the Jewish brotherhood who took themselves off to Damascus, Qumran, and there set about reinvigorating their strict methods of control based upon their very ancient religious belief systems, which themselves may indeed be traced into Egypt and even India. The form running through all these secret societies, apart from the strict method of control, is the underlying belief in and worship of the stars, the sky. It is this element which named them the Shining Ones or Illuminated, and it is this element that is still at the root of so much misinterpreted symbolism. The worship of the stars was known as Sabiism, and the High Mason Albert Pike pointed out, The 7 great primitive nations from whom all others are descended, Persians, Chaldeans, Greek, Egyptians, Turks, Indians and Chinese, were all originally Sabaists and worshipped the stars. The very power of understanding the stars was jealously guarded by all priesthoods around the world, from Aztec to Egyptian. In each case, the role of the priest was to interpret the movements of the stars, sun and moon, in order to better predict the future and for navigation, something the Jesuits would prove to be extremely good at. This jealousy forged ciphers, codes and symbols. It forced the hiding and destruction of implements and tools of trade. Many of the Freemasonic symbols we see today were never meant for building. They were meant for astronomy. These secrets of the stars were deemed mystical, for the populace could not understand how such magic was done, and these secrets were passed from one generation to the next by initiates and adepts. Man collects himself together into groups like fish in a school or birds in a flock. These groups become religions, secret societies, governments, in fact just about any group. There is a simple reason for this grouping, and it is exactly the same for the animals. We form together for protection against predators. There is strength in numbers. Whether you are a Freemason or a Boy Scout, the ultimate reason you join forces with others of like race and like mind is because you see strength and protection. We may think and believe that the Kundalini or some other spark in the biochemical and electrical brain is enlightenment, but it is not. True enlightenment is wisdom, and secret societies were originally often formed from concepts of attaining this true wisdom. However, time alters many things, and now our masters feed us filth and keep us in the dark. We are told what to be like, what to buy, what to do, and what to say. We no longer need to know ourselves. The television has all the answers. But the fact is, what we see on the television is a reflection of greed, money, and capitalism, and these can easily be the dark forces of human nature, and more often than not, the reins of these forces are held by the few. Light and dark are opposite sides of the same coin. Balance is like a coin placed upon its edge, and like a coin, it can easily be knocked over. I desire a good life for my family, but that does not have to include a range of cars, a yacht in every port, or another million. I am not a communist, I'm a realist, and the reality is that while one man has, another does not. My evolutionary instinct is to gather goods, property, and wealth for the bad times ahead, to see me through the winter or the coming storm. The downside of this is that we grow that divisive side of our nature, greed, and somebody, somewhere, suffers. The ancient Chinese texts tell us that mankind has been in this situation before many times, and that his greed and noise has brought his civilizations crashing down to the ground. How close are we to doing it yet again? Those shining ones who were empowered to watch over mankind need not have authority over our minds anymore.